Hey everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And tonight we have a special guest with us. His name is Rob Gutro. Let me give you a quick rundown on his bio before we begin. He's an author, paranormal investigator, and medium with inspired ghost tracking of Maryland. He has become known as a pet medium, which is very interesting to me, actually. And although he does communicate with people who have passed over as well, since he was a child, he could receive messages from ghosts and spirits who have crossed over. He wrote the books such as Pets and the Afterlife, Pets and the Afterlife 2, Ghosts and Spirits, Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead, in order to teach others how ghosts and spirits communicate with the living and give proof of the afterlife. Rob, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining.
Well, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
So you're also a meteorologist, you were saying. Do you work for a newspaper or a TV station or something, or what do you do?
No, I do meteorology behind the scenes. That's all I can tell you. But I used to work at the Weather Channel, actually, on the radio, Weather Channel Radio Network, because I have a face for radio. But
I was going to ask Rob real fast. What's your favorite piece of meteorological equipment to use in the field, or just to get data from? Like a weather station or something? I always wanted to have my own weather station.
So I primarily use satellite data.
Wow, fancy, very fancy.
Yeah. So I do a lot of satellite data interpretations. So.
Oh, nice.
So let us know here, Rob. How young were you when you first started experiencing the paranormal?
Well, I was 14 years old when my first dead person decided to show up. So it was my grandfather, actually. He appeared to me. I didn't have any inkling of the paranormal, but when he did show up, I was home alone, and I wound up telling my parents, and my parents confirmed that my mother had the ability. So it turned out it runs in the family on my mother's side.
I was going to ask you how they responded.
Yeah, it was surprising that my mother was like, well, I have to tell you something. She said, I'm afraid to use it, but you don't have to be. So I really kind of put it aside until I got my life together decades later.
So if you don't mind me asking, when your grandfather came to you, did you already know he had passed away? And what did that conversation look like or sound like?
Yeah. Hi, Terry. So there was actually no conversation, because as soon as he came together, I did know he passed away. I actually went to his wake. That was actually the first wake I had ever gone to. Mm-hmm. And I was 14 years old. And so I knew he'd passed. But as soon as I watched little orbs of light start to come together and coalesce, it like 2 rooms away from where I was, and I sat there transfixed because I didn't know what was going on. I've never seen anything like it before. And then he appeared in full color.
Jesus.
Uh-oh.
You okay, Terry?
I wonder if the cat knocked everything over.
Terry?
I'm okay. I don't know if my computer
I hope that
is.
wasn't a paranormal.
Terry's okay.
Okay.
You have a nice ceiling fan, Terry. Are you okay?
I'm okay. I just don't know if my computer is.
Well, we can see and hear you pretty well, so.
Okay.
I didn't know your
I think that's what I get for not locking up the cat.
It was the cat. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
Cat.
Yeah.
What was that you were saying, Rob?
I wasn't saying anything.
So no,
I was
Rob
saying I was so startled, kind of like when Terry fell over, that I grabbed the dog and I ran outside as soon as my grandfather appeared. So yeah, it's pretty frightening to a teenager.
Mhm.
Let me
I
ask
imagine
you
it
very
would
quickly.
be.
Yep. Let me ask you really quickly, Rob. We've seen this interesting trend, especially in the world of esoterics and spirituality, wherein a child comes of age, hits that adolescent year, and within that, the energy that they encompass, maybe there's something in the way of anchorage, wherein this higher part of themselves comes in. Again, this is around the time that a lot of people start exhibiting anxiety, questioning who they are in the world, and so forth. Of course, this is an observable trend in many ways. But in respect to the spirituality and seeing or having the clairvoyance perhaps latent within them, do you think that that particular event of growing into the next stage of adulthood may actually influence some of those latent abilities?
I do think that as we grow older and grow into teenagehood, our emotions change and expand and grow. So I have found that emotions play a big part anyway in being sensitive to the paranormal. But even little children, though, have the ability, I've found, to see and hear and even feel people on the other side, because they're not dispelling them. They're not using logical thinking. They're just reacting to what they see. So, but one thing that you mentioned about growing and getting older, I've had a number of cases with inspired ghost tracking where teenagers were responsible for poltergeist activity.
How's that? How are they responsible?
I've heard that they are the ones responsible for many poltergeists.
Yeah, usually it's when they go through puberty and their emotions heighten and their hormones change and so forth. And it's been girls and boys in different cases that we've experienced. So in one case, a girl had a lot of jealousy toward her younger sister, and she was able to project shadow images in her room. She was able to move things from her just with her mental energy.
Wow.
And we had to debunk this. And the way we went about doing that is we actually met both of the girls briefly. And my husband, actually, he was also a paranormal investigator, he picked up on it. He picked up that there's an animosity between the two. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. After the girl got therapy, the poltergeist activity stopped.
Do you think in way of a lot of paranormal investigations and even possibly spots that are purportedly haunted, that the resident or the people coming into these spaces may actually be either influencing that sort of activity as a whole, or influencing it in the way of strength or support?
Sure. I think that anybody could influence paranormal activity. And what I found is it's really based on emotional energy. So because ghosts, by the way, I call ghosts the earthbound ones, and I call spirits the ones that have crossed over, so that there's a distinction. So I'm able to talk clearly about them. Both use physical energies, both use emotional energies. But the ghosts, the earthbound ones, they use fear, anxiety, depression, and anger. They use negative emotional energies. And spirits use love, faith, and hope. So if people move into a new space and they're anxious, or they deal with depression or something like that, I found that they fuel those earthbound entities so that they can communicate more often.
Makes sense.
Why do you think it is that the earthbound energies stay here?
Oh gosh, we found a lot of reasons why they stay there. Some of them like the homes that they've lived in for most of their lives. Others think they can help their families cope with their crossing, and they really can't. They can when they cross over and become spirit. Others are afraid, actually, to cross over. One interesting thing that I've found as a paranormal investigator and a medium is that I found that people who tend to be more very deeply religious tend to be the ones that stay behind because they're afraid that if they cross over, they're going to go to a bad place because of that life review at the end of their lives.
I have a hypothesis about that, actually. And I think that people who were raised in a religious household, like Ralph himself, were raised Catholic. And we're no longer Catholic. And in fact, Ralph is an atheist now. However, that whole idea of possibly going to hell for something you did in your life sticks in the back of your brain.
Oh yeah, it does.
So I think that that's a serious problem. I really do, with a lot of people.
So I've come up with a definition of hell. As someone, I am also an ex-Catholic. And I've come to realize that, religions were developed so that they would be guidelines for us to live our life in a good way or a better way, for the most part. And then, they stray in ways, but they developed the concept of heaven and hell so that people would be more willing to adhere to the guidelines without facing a penalty. So I think that's, those concepts are all really, to me, they're all man-created. So that said, when we get that life review at the end, these people who are deeply religious will see something they did in their life that they think was hurtful or was really mean or terrible. So they stay back. And what I've come to find out is that being trapped as an earthbound ghost, where you can't communicate with spirit, where you're lucky if you run into a medium, that's really hell, because you're there for eternity and you can't communicate with anybody.
So do you think that that's why so many earthbound energies are negative?
I'm not sure. And I want to stress that the negative emotional part of a ghost has nothing to do with their personality. I think it has something to do with the location of being on Earth. Negative energy versus positive emotional energy.
I'll
let you know when I'm on the other side, okay?
I also find that when you come into contact with some of these, what would be considered more negative entities, even if they were human at one point in time, it's almost as if they're able to express their emotion, possibly being that essence of emotion within this particular vibration, and it sort of resonates the way that, perhaps sound does in water. So for us, as contrast, we're walking around and using the air as our medium to make sound and so forth. Water is obviously much more expansive. I find that, possibly there may be some sensitivity in way of, again, just that raw emotion, because there have been plenty of times that I've had the complete opposite experience where I had a spirit with me who was actually very elated and very joyful, and my God, did the room go up in vibration. But I've been on the converse end as well, and it's very distinct. And I think that you're right, that it may have something to do with the location, at least, again, in way of energetic support or drawing from that location. But in the end, it has to do, I think, with that particular entity that is carrying that emotion.
I would imagine being an earthbound spirit or earthbound ghost, as it were, would be very lonely, because you wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone. And I wonder if that's what makes them act out in negative ways.
Well, you get to a line, you're going to realize that there are no boundaries for you anyway. Why not test whatever you can to get some sort of reaction? Maybe.
I suppose, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so, Rob, how did you get involved with being a medium for pets?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that all came about because of a tragedy. So behind me is my dog Buzz. He was a puppy when he was killed in 2005. When his leash opened and I was walking him, he was only 7 months old. And he is solely responsible for me being able to communicate with pets on the other side. So when he passed, he kind of blew the doors off of that. It was actually him that reawakened my abilities. I had one experience back in the 90s with my aunt, coming through to me in a haunted house that I lived in. But it wasn't until 2005 that he started. He came through probably within the hour after he died, in many different ways, and in front of many other people too. And since then, I've been able to communicate with other pets.
Can you tell us what transpired in that event?
Yeah, how did you know it was him communicating with you, etc.?
So as a medium, I can hear them, I can see them, I can feel them, I can smell them. I have all of those different ways to communicate. And I realized this afterward. So one of the very first things that he did was he provided, with the help of somebody in spirit, some human in spirit, a musical sign for me as soon as I walked in the door, an hour later after he was killed. I walked in the door and the radio was playing. Now, I had a roommate, but the roommate was at work. None of us, we don't have the radio on, but the radio was on. And on the radio was a very, very blatant message to me. And it was the song, The Dance by Garth Brooks. About a man who had a very short time to love somebody deeply and is very appreciative of it. And he was glad for the dance. So I listened to that and I thought, that's really odd. The radio should be on. We never left it on. Why am I hearing this? So I didn't pay attention to it at that time. We took his body to the vet. There were 3 friends that met me there. We were standing out in the back and near the trash cans. Trash can lid blew up in the air 4 feet where we were standing next to it, and there was no physical explanation. And I heard him in my head say, "Dad, it's me. I'm okay." And that took me back. Over time, he did all kinds of things. There was another incident where I was waiting in a car outside of my house, and my roommate was coming out, and he ran out screaming because he saw one of his sneakers move from one side of the hallway to the other side of the hallway. Buzz had an affinity for destroying sneakers and shoes as a puppy. And he ran out screaming. He was terrified. And I told him, I said, it's Buzz. He just wants us to know he's here. So those were just a few signs, but there are many, many more that continue actually to happen to this day.
Do you think that Buzz may have come? Sorry, I'll just want to ask him one quick question there, Terry. Do you think that Buzz or Bud? I'm sorry.
Buzz.
B-U-Z-Z.
Yeah.
Do you think that he came into this life to give you this specific lesson? A lot of us think that the physicality may be, beginning and end of some certain lesson or time we have with these entities, and yet, you have something like your situation where this animal is actually teaching you from the other side. Do you think it was his purpose to come into this life with you under this contract, let's say?
I do. That's very insightful. Yeah, and I finally figured that out, that he was only meant to be here for 7 months, and he was meant to help me reawaken my abilities, and he was meant to teach me so that I can help bring healing to others. And actually I have a little memorial for him in our garden, and I wrote, "Your short time here has brought healing to countless people." Because since I wrote this book, this one came out in 2013. This was my 3rd book. Since I wrote this book, I do lectures at animal rescues up and down the East Coast. And I don't charge them anything. I do them as fundraisers. So they charge something and they keep the money and help the shelter animals. But I bring comfort to people who have lost a pet. And every time I do these lectures and these sessions, people will tell their own stories. And there'll be tears and healing and hugs. And it's amazing, the healing that goes on. So Buzz really has given a lot of people a gift of healing.
Besides dogs, what other animals have you interacted with?
That's a great question. So almost every domesticated animal you can think of, they have to be domesticated. because they learn our language, they learn our habits, our routines, and so forth and so on. We raise them to be like children. We do everything we do for pets as we do for human children. So cats, horses, birds, gerbils, rats, even
Snakes.
a fish. What's that?
Snakes.
No, I draw the line at reptiles. I always tell everybody I don't like that old Jim Stafford song. I don't like spiders and snakes. Nothing personal, but I'm sorry.
I don't know that. So my question for you though was, we were discussing how those that have passed, they're either ghosts or spirits. Do the animals, are they in that same kind of situation where they could be earthbound as well or crossover?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have learned that around 99% of our pets cross over. Very, very infrequently have I come across a ghost. I think I came across one ghost cat in a paranormal investigation, and a ghost dog that decided to stay behind in England, which is now a museum. It's Sir John Soane's museum. He was a famous architect in Britain in the 1800s. And when I walked in that house, there was a little dog running around, and as it turned out, I was able to confirm that it was John Soane's dog. There turned out to be a painting of this little dog with Mrs. Soane hanging on the wall when we get into another room. So that story's in my Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation book. So
Sounds great. Well, we think that we have a ghost cat here.
Okay.
I mean, I'll hear this cat. I swear I see it go by. We've definitely felt it brush up against our legs. And we have no idea why it's here because it doesn't belong to us. And it didn't show up until Ralph moved in with us. So
blame me.
Well, we were talking to a medium on the podcast, and she suggested that possibly the cat is connected to Ralph through a past family member, but Ralph couldn't think of anyone in his family that even had a cat, and he certainly never had a cat growing up. So he's not much of a cat person.
Further. May go back further in his family history. You never know. Some of these things, it could be 3-4 generations back. I have some pictures of just that time in my family, and I'll be damned if some of these people don't look exactly like the generations that are here, and then the likeness and character has also been passed down, but skipped a few. It's just something to consider. You brought up an interesting thought here, Rob, and that is that you may communicate with fish as well. Now, I've understood, and this has been put forward in wave theory many times before, that there's this idea of an oversoul, wherein some of these species, particularly some species of bird, but certainly fish had been mentioned in these conversations, that it's not the individual consciousness that is being recognized, it's again in the way of an oversoul. How do you see this particular concept based on what you do?
Yeah, that very well could be. I haven't run into that, but and the fish that I was able to connect with, and by the way, I need a picture of the animal or fish, if you will, and their name in order to connect to the energy. So they just actually showed me their favorite things, and they showed me what they saw outside of their aquarium, and I was able to describe certain things in the room, which is kind of weird for me, but that's the only way that they could relate to their human who they were. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that. There's probably an oversoul.
Rob, I have a similar question, I guess. Well, first I want to say I really like your story about Buzz, and I'm so glad that it encouraged you to do this great work volunteering at an animal hospital. I will say that if anybody wants to just relieve stress, they should definitely volunteer at an animal hospital. It's a lot of fun, and I think it does a lot of good. And then my question was, I wonder, have you thought about what the mechanism is for which ghosts, for example, like traverse the environment or exist in the same environment as us. For example, we're third-dimensional beings. We have height, width, length, and we're made of matter. So do you think, have you thought about it? Because there's a lot of, I don't know what it is. They could be higher dimensional beings. They could be on some kind of spectrum that we cannot, easily see or hear. But have you thought about what mechanism ghosts use to interact with us or to live among us?
Well, to me, they're beings of energy with a conscience,
Okay.
memories, personality, and knowledge of a life that has passed. So that's the way I look at them. And as energy, they have mass. So one thing that I still don't understand is why, after a short period of time, they seem to be stuck or they can't move on by themselves. I don't understand that. And spirits on the other side can't help them until a light is opened. So as a paranormal investigator, we go in and we open a portal to the other side. We bring in their relatives from the other side to encourage the ghost to cross over, and then they're able to make that connection. But they are, I just look at them as beings of energy with a conscience.
Okay, well, that's good. I think that's very insightful for someone who works with it a lot more than I do. Then I love hearing your opinion about that. Thank you.
Well, I'm a geek, like I said, I'm a scientist. So like you, so the basis for all of my understanding is in the foundation of energy and how energy behaves.
Sure. Yep.
This may seem like a silly question, but and Wild, you'll get a kick out of this. I hear a lot of people question the validity of ghosts, and the reason they do question it is because they ask, why have we never seen a ghost of a dinosaur?
That is a good question.
I just answered this question in a recent interview. So,
Did you?
I had to think about it, and it really applies to why most pets cross over, and this is the way I look at it. Pets, because they can sense energy, they can sense emotional energy, as we talked about, happy, sad, angry. They can read our emotions. They also can sense when there's an area of peace and calm and love and even forgiveness. So that's why most pets go toward the light. They go to that area where it's really receptive and peaceful. And my theory is that dinosaurs, any living creature really, did the same exact thing. And that's why we don't see any dinosaur ghosts.
Do you think it could also be because they have no connection to us?
Dinosaurs?
Yeah.
I don't think it really matters if anybody was connected to humans. Honestly, I think any life before humans even showed up would all still go into the light because they can sense the peace on the other side.
I really keyed into this idea because I knew what your answer was going to be, Rob, before. Based on what you had discussed, I correctly predicted what you were going to say. So basically, you're saying that animals, including dinosaurs, they just have a much easier time when they die, and they don't have that many struggles just because of their nature. They're drawn more easily toward what they're supposed to do, which is cross over. Does that sound correct?
It does. I find that because humans tend to be very stubborn and bullheaded, we choose to stay behind. Sometimes we can be really arrogant and think that if we stay behind, we can fix things the way we wanted them to be before we leave. Animals don't have that. They don't have those hang-ups that we have.
Yeah, I was gonna give an example. Like, as a biologist looking at all kinds of animals for several decades, I've learned that animals are like so much better than humans at living life, like at just doing things to make them happy. Like a squirrel is so much easier at having like a kid and just eating squirrels and just living a full life. It's so much easier for them than humans. So it makes sense that, well, I think it's because they have less of an ego, basically. They don't get like, stuck thinking about themselves and their place in the universe and stuff like that.
Well,
But it
they
makes
don't
sense. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say they don't have that rationalization that perhaps we do, or the self-awareness that sometimes can either behoove us or get us into trouble. What Rob is suggesting here in way of an intrinsic trajectory on that particular path of crossing over, I think it would be like something, again, very natural. And again, I have to agree with Rob on that. There wouldn't be any thought or hang-up to keep them here or being earthbound. I think a lot of the reason any of us are earthbound at all is because of the emotional energy that we perhaps attach ourselves to. We may allow ourselves to go into some sort of recollection loop and actually live through that the same way that you might live through a dream. It's just as real, but it is temporary. And I've often had the wonder of how long certain spirits hang around, because there are a lot of different places that suggest that thousands and thousands of years that energy has been there. But that may be another conversation, but still something curious to look at.
I wonder why it is that, well, I haven't anyway, I've never heard of a haunted zoo with a ghost of a tiger walking around, or monkeys or whatever. And I kind of wonder, there are?
There are some, yeah. What was it? Let's see. There's a couple zoos. There's one out in California near the Bronson Cave area that is purportedly haunted. There's another one out where I am that I haven't explored, but it's not far off. I have actually heard of this, believe it or not, Damon. It's kind of weird, right?
The other thing I was thinking about is like, okay, I think that generally, yes, animals have a much easier time crossing over, so we don't have ghosts of animals. But I don't think it's 100%. I think there are probably, like, for example, perhaps a lot of cryptids, perhaps they're ghosts of animals that live. Perhaps there are dinosaur ghosts, just not that many, but perhaps they are cryptids, basically, what we call cryptids.
So you're talking about maybe pterosaurs or even the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, there's a lot of animals that people see. They don't really see it that well, but they get a general outline and it looks scary. And to me, that could just be, a prehistoric animal. And we're not. That's why we can't put it with a modern animal, because it's actually an extinct animal. That's just. I think it's possible. I don't see why it wouldn't be possible.
Well, there's also the idea that living on these different frequencies, and of course we've addressed this many times over. But again, to extend in way of the topic at hand, you may be just seeing this overlapping of a different reality, just intermeshing. The same way that sometimes you walk into, for example, I had that experience at the graveyard, wherein I was watching an entire town bustle in front of me. Every time I focused on one person, it would be an aspect of that body. So I'd see the head. As soon as I focused on the head, it would disappear, and then I'd look, very close peripheral. I'd see the torso and the legs, and could never get the whole thing at once. But I was catching everywhere I was looking. It was, creating around that peripheral. Maybe that's part of it. I mean, again, that's a possibility, man. They're still there. They're still alive. They're having that experience. We're just now privy to, that particular time.
Something that I've learned since started doing this show, talking about like the afterlife, is I'm pretty sure I'm going to get your advice, Rob. This is what I know what you're going to say, because it's a good idea. What I'm going to do when I'm getting close to death or I'm about to die, I'm going to be super chill about it. I'm going to be excited. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to be like, this is the start of an awesome adventure. And then whatever comes after it, I'm just going to ride it like a roller coaster, and I'm not really going to resist anything. I think that's probably the best way to handle dying. Definitely just be happy and excited and not scared and fearful. And yeah.
Well, we were just talking to somebody on the podcast, and she is a member of the positive death movement. And that's basically what they teach people. They teach people to accept death as just a natural thing, and don't be afraid of it.
Right.
And just, it's something we all do. It's just like being born. Everybody does it. So yeah. And I thought that was a really good outlook on death.
Yeah.
Because, and like we were mentioning earlier, people are afraid of death. They're afraid of the afterlife because they don't know what's going to happen. And so if you just go into it with that kind of attitude where I'll just accept this and go with the flow, I think that's probably the best way to do it.
I think it has a lot to do with that religion, though, that you were talking about. I think the religion that, most of us have been brought up with has messed us up when it comes to death.
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't want to pick on Ralph, but I'm going to do it anyway. Ralph, I think you mentioned that one of your biggest fears in the paranormal is that there is no afterlife. Is that still correct?
Yeah, that's one of the fears.
Interesting.
So I'll just jump in and let you know that the way that I explain it is that you don't need a religion to believe in the afterlife. All you need to do is have an understanding how energy works. Because of the law of conservation of energy states that energy can't be destroyed, only transformed. And
Right.
so what happens is the physical energies that are within our bodies, coupled with the memories, personality, and knowledge, and that energy moves. It either chooses to stay as an energy earthbound or crosses over and joins the energy of the cosmos. So you could be an atheist and just believe in science. And there you go. There's your afterlife.
Yeah, I totally agree. Agree. Let me jump in here just for a moment to address our viewers. Rob has written just a grip of books, and I just mentioned a few of them in the intro, but I'm going to drop a link to his Amazon page in the description so you can check out all of his books, and he's just got a plethora. The other thing I want to mention, I've been mentioning the podcast. We had Rob on our podcast at Paranormal News Network, which is a totally separate entity than Black Lotus, but it's part of under the same umbrella. And we talk about, paranormal there. And there's a link down there in the description for that. So definitely go check that out. Rob, this is kind of off topic, but what are your thoughts? We had a shadow person that hung out here at the house with us, but we haven't seen it in almost a year now. What are your thoughts on shadow people, and are they the same thing as ghosts?
So, well, there's a lot of takes on shadow people, and my friend Mike Ricksecker, who wrote a book on shadow people, different kinds of shadow people, I look to him as kind of an authority. But my experience with shadow people is that they are either ghosts or they're spirits, and they just don't have enough energy to become visible. So if you think about a light bulb that has a very, very dim, a very, very small amount of electricity, you can see the outline of the light bulb in the dark. But if you put a lot of energy in that light bulb, it will light up and you'll see it fully visible. And that's the way I look at ghosts and energy, ghosts and spirits and energy. So those shadow figures are likely just people or pets that don't have enough energy to become fully visible. And my aunt actually appeared to me as a shadow figure.
Did she?
Okay. What is the main reason people come to you to look for their pets?
Oh gosh, there's quite a number of reasons. Most of them come to me because they're just in serious grief over the loss of their pets. Other people come to me because they don't know the answer of what took the life of their pet, what caused their pet to pass. I've solved many pet death mysteries from the other side, which is to me, it's astounding to me that a pet can share this stuff. They also want to know what kind of signs a pet will give them later on. So I'm able to convey that. They also want to know if their pet will have any influence on their lives, and they do. A pet will lead you to another pet, the next pet that you will adopt. It happens over and over again. So there are a number of reasons why they come to me. But one of the most disconcerting reasons why people come to me is because they're in really deep grief. And I have to tell you that some people have actually written me and told me that they were suicidal after the loss of their pet.
Huh.
So for those people, please contact somebody to help you, a therapist or the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. and I've read scientific studies that actually confirm that we grieve more deeply for our pets usually than we do for humans. And the reason is because they rely on us 100%, and we raise them like children. And as humans, we're taught that our children will grow up and go off and marry someone we hate, and not talk to us. But pets don't do that. Pets are just full of love, and so that's.
I wonder if the reason we grieve more for our pets is because with humans, we usually, generally, we have more closure with them. We know they're going to die. They're in the hospital. We know it. Generally, we know what to expect. But when pets die, it's just kind of out of the blue usually. If they get hit by a car, for instance, or they get, I don't know, something happens outside or something like that. Now, in a lot of cases, the pet is taken to the vet because they have to be put down because they're in misery or something like that. That's a different story. But I wonder if that's possibly why we grieve more for pets, is because sometimes it just happens out of the blue.
Sure, I think it is because we assume responsibility for their well-being. So we are making a life and death choice for them. And that's another reason why, I'm glad you brought that up. That's another reason why people contact me all the time. They contact me and they tell me they feel guilty over and over again. Did I do it too soon? Did I wait too long? Was my pet in serious pain? For people who are going through that, couple of quick notes. Number one, if your pet stops eating and starts isolating, you'll know that it's near time. Number two, if you can't find the courage to be with your pet in the vet's office, and some people have not, try and find it, even if it's for 5 minutes.
I was going to mention that because a lot of people do that. They take the pet to the vet and just drop them off and leave. And that's just probably the cruelest thing you can do, because the pet is in pain and it's in a strange environment. It doesn't really know what's going on. And like you said, there are children. I wouldn't do that with a child.
Yeah, would you do that with a human? Would you do that with a human son or daughter?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Never. So
if you really, really, really can't, have a relative go in and bring an article of your clothing with your scent on it, which will help calm the pet. And know that the pet understands your emotions and the trauma that you're going through after having made that decision. And they appreciate that you found the courage to at least do the right thing for them out of love. So don't ever feel guilty about helping your pet achieve peace on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the cruelest things you could do. And I know the emotions can be overwhelming, but again, would you do that with your son or daughter? No, hell no. So, yeah. Wild, Michael, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's once again, it's very technical. My question was, I think the study of paranormal, for it to advance, we need a breakthrough device to help us observe the paranormal. I'm thinking about the microscope. It let us see the micro world, and a telescope let us see the stars. I'm thinking a big thing that needs to happen is we need to develop this tool that helps us see it. And that's kind of why I want to know, like, what is the mechanism of it, so we could better detect it. So if it is energy based, there are different forms of energy, but there are cameras out there and there is equipment that can detect different types of energy. So perhaps that's the direction we should take this type of research in.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Misty Dragons. Hi, Misty. How are you? Hey, listen, do us a favor. Like an idiot, to share this around to the socials. Would you do me a favor and share this around a little bit? Really would appreciate it. So anyway, Misty
I also want to
biggest
shout out
fans.
I want to shout out Misty because this is interesting. So I just started a research project. It's a little bit paranormal. Basically, we have a friend who's named Wreaking Havoc 215 on YouTube, and he's having abductions. But he also started recording orbs in his living room, like little orbs of light, and he was using an infrared camera. Now, everybody says that these are just dust particles or pollen or insects or something. So what we're actually doing is we're going to use an air filter to clean the air and then compare that footage to the footage without. So we're trying to find out, I want to get to the bottom of it. But I just want to say Misty, who we were just shouting out, she has volunteered and she's helping with this science experiment. So thank you, Misty, for doing that. Yeah.
That's
and also
fantastic.
Beth. Beth is also helping. I forget what her screen name is, but she'll probably watch this at some time. So thank you, Beth and Misty.
I got to
double kick check.
Yeah, there you go.
I got to catch some of that live presentation of the paranormal investigation that Wreaking Havoc did, and he did it on your channel, Michael. And so I got to watch some of it, but I was in the middle of cooking dinner, and so I didn't really have a lot of time to watch. But what I did catch was there was some real success there. One of the things I caught was they asked the researchers or investigators asked, was there a murder in this apartment? And they were using a dowsing rod, and they asked, across the rods for yes, and put them back behind me if it's no. And almost immediately they crossed. And I thought that was really.
No, it was an interesting investigation. They were using some very interesting techniques in way of what we have available to us. They certainly didn't come short of equipment, so that was pretty cool. I would like to hear the end review of what they had found, because everybody's excited in the moment, and everybody's coming to certain conclusions based on their own convictions. And I was watching this happen quite often. Somebody says there's a man who died in the living room, I think, and another person says no, there was a woman who died in the bedroom, and I think John says so there was 2 suicides, and they're like, no, there was only 1. But there wasn't anything further from that, so there was something there, but what it wasn't ascertained at the time of the investigation. But as I understand, Josh and his crew are putting together the summary of that particular night, and we'll see what happens, man. It was cool to get them in there and support John that way.
We were talking about shadow people earlier, and this Wreaking Havoc guy, John, he has a shadow person, and he has video footage of the thing, and it was just amazing to watch that. He was on our show here, but was there any conclusion at all about that, Michael?
Not to my knowledge. They just kept picking up that there was a presence there, or that there were several. I think at one point somebody had said 6, and that was pretty early on into the investigation. So if they were picking up 6 definitive spirits, that's pretty cool. I'd like to see exactly how they were identifying and separating them in way of communication. Hopefully that'll be in the review. But John's also a purported abductee, so he has extraterrestrial influence in this as well. I mean, this particular place that he lives, though, not only are things happening all around him environmentally, but directly to him, especially while he's sleeping. We don't have any explanations for these odd physical anomalies that he wakes up, all over his body, puncture wounds, certain scratches. It certainly isn't him just scratching himself in the night and cutting. They're too precise. These things have geometric architecture to them, so it's a little odd. And then he adds on top of that he feels like he's being pulled out of his body and then dropped right back in, and he actually has physical reactions that wake him up to being dropped back into his body with these particular grays around him or whatever they are. Long story short, he's got a mecca of paranormal activity over there. It is the quintessential spot to sit down and look at because of all the different angles. But at the end of the day, we're still left scratching our head saying, what does exactly all of this mean, and how does it relate to John? Right.
I've got a question for you, Rob. I'm really into ufology, and a common question in ufology is there a link between the paranormal and UFOs or aliens?
Yeah, that's a good question. the only aspect of that I have come up with is that when people here run into what they call dark energies or demons or whatever, my theory is that those dark energies or demons, if you will, are actually life forms from another planet that have reached Earth. Because as energy beings, we can traverse the cosmos. And when you come to an environment in which everything is unfamiliar, you're going to act defensive. That's your first thing, is to protect yourself, even if you're an energy being. So, as someone who's defensive, they may be, they could be on the offensive and attack or hurt people. So because that's what I call a demon. I don't look at it in a religious connotation at all. We found 4,800 exoplanets. We've got another 7,800 that haven't been that are being cataloged right now. We found water on Ganymede, one of the moons of Jupiter, in the last 2 weeks. We found water in other parts of our own solar system, certainly. We found evidence of water under the surface of Mars. So that's our own solar system. There are countless solar systems, countless galaxies. So there's life out there.
Well, and that's life as we know it. I mean, I think that there are also civilizations out there that don't exist as we do. So they wouldn't necessarily need water or much sunlight. I think photosynthesis would be necessary, in my opinion, but not totally. But I think we're probably going to get out of here for the night. One more shout out to the viewers is that we have a Patreon page, and if you go there, it's only $5 and a month, and that's 16 cents a day, and you get extra content for that. And what we do is every Sunday we get done with this, and then we go over there and we just kind of chat, about everything. So please go check that out, and we are going to be there in about, I think, 20 minutes. So anyway, Rob, thank you so much for being on the show with us. It was a pleasure last time to have you on the podcast, and it was certainly a pleasure to have you this time. And I'm glad you got to be able to talk to Terry and Wild and Michael about this stuff, because we're all very into this stuff, So anyway, yeah, thank you very much.
Yes,
You
thank
guys
you.
are awesome. I
Thank you,
appreciate it. Thank you.
So folks, until next time, keep thinking and questioning everything, and hit that Patreon page.